In today's complete Ultraman monster history, we'll be covering the Ultraseven Kaiju Agira, perhaps the most forgotten member of Ultraseven's Capsule Monster Squad. Miclas, Windom, and Sevenger have all somehow managed to return far more often than their poor upright Triceratops pal, and I think it's about time that Agira got his moment in the spotlight, don't you? Well, good news, he's about to get it on today's episode of the Toku Professor. Yes, you've arrived! Greetings to all of you students! Glad to have each and every one of you. Hope you're ready to get started, because we're going to look at Agira's behind-the-scenes backstory now. Let's Agira up for some fun! And jump right in. Agira was the third and final Capsule Kaiju introduced in the Ultraseven series, in episode 32. For those who haven't seen the series, the Capsule Kaiju were giant heroic monsters that Dan Moroboshi stored within little capsules, and would sometimes release to battle against other monsters. Kind of sounds like Pokemon, right? Well, that's no wonder, because the Capsule Kaiju were actually one of the inspirations behind the Pokemon series. Originally, all the Capsule Kaiju were supposed to be pre-existing Ultra monsters from Ultraman and Ultra Q, namely Red King, Pagila, Antlar, and Pagos. These choices were later replaced because apparently Tsuburaya Productions decided that they didn't want Ultraseven to exist in the same canon as their previous works. Thing is though, Return of Ultraman later retconned this, and Ultraseven was eventually grafted back into the canon of the other Ultra series shows. If they'd known they were going to do that, maybe they would have stuck with the original Capsule Kaiju lineup. But that would mean Agira wouldn't exist, so I'm fine with how things turned out. Pagos was initially supposed to be the Capsule Kaiju in episode 32, and was featured in the preliminary draft, but then he was fired, and in the final draft, Windom was slated to reappear instead. Meanwhile, the show had already gotten underway, and apparently viewership ratings weren't as high at that point as Tsuburaya wanted, so it was decided that the Capsule Kaiju for the episode would be switched again to a totally new monster, in the hopes that this would help the show's ratings. Senkatsu Ikea designed the creature and based it on a Triceratops. According to him, the inspiration to make Agira a dinosaur came from a Toku show that was on around the same time, known as The Monster Prince. Wrong one. Thank you. Our old friend Ryosaku Takayama seems to have constructed Agira's suit, which was worn by Kunio Suzuki in this episode and by Toshihiko Saikyo in episode 46, which was the only other time Agira appeared in the series. In that other episode, the suit had some extra paint applied to it. They also gave Agira a different roar the second time around. In his first appearance, it was seemingly adapted from a Rodan roar and sounded like this. And for his return, it sounded like Zumbalar instead. Because of this, in more modern media, Tsuburaya Productions seems to have trouble deciding which cry they want to use for him. The other inconsistent thing between the monster's two appearances is that Dan Moroboshi uses two differently colored capsules to release Agira in the two episodes, gold in the first and red in the second. I guess Agira just moved to a different house during his time off. Agira was actually named after one of Eiji Tsuburaya's sons, Akira. Imagine not just being the son of the creator of Tokusatsu and working on many Toku shows, but also having a kaiju named after you. This guy's living the Tokusatsu dream. I've also seen Agira's name spelled like this, and I've heard it pronounced Agira instead. Okay, I think it's time to jump into the Ultraman canon and find out what Agira was up to during the events of Ultraseven. Let's do it! After several Ultra Guard members were stranded on a flying island that came from the asteroid belt, they discovered an unmanned alien base on the island that was jamming electronic machines over a wide area. Dan Moroboshi headed out to destroy this base so they could all escape, but he soon ran into a giant four-legged monster named Rigger who was wandering around the foggy island. He tried to transform into Ultraseven to deal with the creature, but was prevented from doing so by the electromagnetic waves. The kaiju ambled past him and lumbered toward his friends, so Dan, determined to protect them, pulled out a kaiju capsule and told Agira it was his turn. And it only took until the 32nd episode. This 45-meter, 12,000-ton Triceratops was apparently native to the planet Animal in Nebula M78, according to other sources. Agira wasted no time in tackling Rigger and rode him like a bull rider before being flung backwards. The energetic monster tried to damage Rigger's head with his horn and then rolled across his opponent. Rigger responded by whacking Agira with his tail and then turned around to look at his foe, who caused his frill to puff up, perhaps as an intimidation tactic.
Frills are so cool, aren't they?
Yep. It's the Kashima-kun imposter from the Frill Nightmare! What do I do? Ignore him and move on. Yes. The show cut away from the monsters for a while to show Dan blowing up the unmanned base. Agira had bought the Ultra Guard member the time he needed. Unfortunately, Dan didn't get far enough away from the explosion and was knocked unconscious, which meant he couldn't call Agira back. The brave monster fought on and wrestled Rigger to the ground, and the two rolled through the fog. He then got to his feet and began jumping around like a monkey and trying to ram Rigger with his horn. The battle continued off-screen, and soon we returned to the action. Rigger wrapped his tail around Ultraseven's kaiju and tossed him into a rock. Things were really beginning to go bad for the Triceratops, and because he was so exhausted, he couldn't get away as Rigger began pounding him over and over with his tail. Luckily, at that moment, Dan finally regained consciousness and was able to save his monster just in the nick of time. Then, he transformed into Ultraseven to battle Rigger. But that's a story for another day. Let's focus on a story not for another day, that being Agira's second appearance in Ultraseven episode 46. In this one, Dan utilized Agira to battle a robotic imitation of his true Ultra identity, because once again he wasn't able to use his Ultra Eye. This time it was because he had left it in his uniform, which was in his car, parked far away. Not sure exactly why he didn't take the Ultra Eye with him. Probably not a great decision on his part, though it did work out since he was captured for a time and they probably would have confiscated the transformation item. Though on the other hand, they didn't take his Capsule Kaiju. Nobody's really acting in a very wise manner, are they? Hopefully Agira can make some smart decisions. I think he'll need to if he wants to have a chance against an almost exact copy of his powerful master. Agira did a little jump after he appeared and then rushed forward to fight imitation Ultraseven. Oh no, not the start Agira needed. Oh no. Agira was severely outmatched and quickly rushed for cover, hiding behind a little cliff. He rubbed his face as if he was moping and made this annoyed, pouty face, perhaps upset that Ultraseven expected him to fight such a powerful adversary. Quite a funny little moment. Keep it in mind because we'll see Agira in this exact pose again a bit later on. Meanwhile, the imitation Ultraseven had already located the hiding Triceratops and stood looking down at the sad monster in a mocking way. Then he tapped the kaiju on the back, shocking the poor monster, who fell over in surprise. The robot then began yanking on the head of the poor creature and kicked him down the cliff before the show cut away from the battle. Then Agira, just disappeared from the episode. And not only from the episode, but from the entire show. He was never seen again in Ultraseven. Did he survive the battle? Did he return to Dan's capsule? Did he die? Well, TV audiences had no way of knowing because no explanation was given. However, I believe most probably assumed he was still alive because his death was not shown. Also, the super cheaply produced series Ultra Fight, released between Ultraseven and Return of Ultraman, featured the monster, which you can maybe take as an implication he survived, although this show isn't canon. Speaking of Ultra Fight, let's take a quick peek at Agira's role in this incredibly low-budget production. This show, consisting of 196 super short episodes, has 8 that I am aware of with Agira in them, in which he fought Wu and got chased away up a hill, beat up Eleking but then ended up getting beat up himself, tried to take out Eleking again but was defeated once more, was rescued from Alien Icarus by Ultraseven, tried to come to Seven's aid against Alien Baltan but was knocked out twice, fought Teleston and then left the rest to Seven, was rescued again from Alien Godzilla, and finally was defeated by Alien Icarus after failing a jump attack. Apparently, the same suit from Ultraseven was used for the series with several fangs added to it, but the costume wasn't treated very well throughout the show, so it's hard to tell. His face also has a tendency to stick up in the air in the series. A notable part of Agira's appearances in Ultra Fight are the nice moments he shares with Ultraseven throughout the show. You can tell that the two are good buddies. It's also worth mentioning that Agira didn't defeat any of the monsters he fought in this series, unless Ultraseven handled the end of the fight for him. Meanwhile, returning to the canonical Ultraman series, there was still no confirmation that Agira survived the fight with imitation Ultraseven in the live-action shows and movies. He didn't even appear in Heisei Ultraseven, a sequel series to the original show, even though Seven's other two original capsule monsters, Miclas and Windom, did. He was apparently mentioned in the novelization, but I don't believe he was given a shout-out in any of the episodes. Miclas and Windom appeared again in Ultraman Mabius, and again, Agira was nowhere to be seen, in person anyway. Miclas then returned in Ultra Galaxy Mega Monster Battle Neo. No Agira. Had the kaiju really succumbed to the robotic Ultraseven? Well, the answer to that question is no, he survived. And how do I know? Because of this film, Mega Monster Battle Ultra Galaxy Legends the movie. In this motion picture, Ultraseven's Agira finally returned, alongside the other two members of Seven's original Capsule Kaiju trio. Woohoo, there's our pal! Fuyuki Shinada, who was in charge of creating the monster suits for the movie, is reported to be the one who came up with the idea of having Ultraseven's 3 monsters fight together. I believe he was also the one responsible for creating the brand new sleek Agira suit used for this movie. We Agira fans have several things to thank him for. The screenplay for the movie originally called for Agira to take on Saramandora, aka Salamander, but in the finished movie he instead fought... well, I'll show you. Dan Moroboshi summoned his 3 original Capsule Kaiju to save the protagonist of the Mega Monster Battle series, Ray, from a Bimstar, Salamander, and Durako, who were moving in to take Ray out before he could retrieve his Neo Battlenizer. Dan's monsters each took on a different creature, with Agira selecting Durako. The 2 monsters exchanged blows, and then, after hearing some encouragement from Dan, Agira was able to fling Durako upwards an impressive distance, and then performed an incredible leap that almost seemed to defy the laws of physics, and rammed Durako with his horn, which caused the winged kaiju to explode, for some reason. Yeah, that little sequence of events was a bit odd looking. Perhaps it wasn't supposed to be analyzed this closely. But hey, Agira's back, and he got his first win. His work done, Agira lined up next to his 2 pals and was called back to his capsule by Dan Moroboshi, and he didn't pop up again during the movie. But now that Tsuburaya Productions had a fresh, sleek new Agira costume, surely they were going to reuse it a few more times to make the investment worth it, right? I mean, ever since the Ultra Galaxy era, that's what they've done with so many other suits. They reuse them like crazy. Well, Tsuburaya did use the suit again, but not as often as you might have guessed. Ultraman Ginga and Ginga S didn't use it, for example, though you can spot an Agira Spark doll in Ginga. Agira made a super brief in-person appearance in Ultraman X when Hikaru Raido was talking about Ultramen who were buddies with monsters. Then it doesn't seem that the suit was used again for the next 6 years until Ultra Galaxy Fight: The Destined Crossroad. In this show, he again was sent out by Ultraseven alongside Miclas and Windom. He fought a bunch of Absolution soldiers on the planet Babel, and using some claw swipes, he was able to take out several of them in his very limited amount of screen time. Agira's most recent major appearance, as of the creation of this video, was in several episodes of Ultraman Decker, because for some reason Decker had the ability to use the same monsters Ultraseven owned. He was capable of calling Agira to the battlefield with this Mons Dimension card.
Ah, they did it again! They put a kaiju on a card again! What, do you think we like being trapped in 2 dimensions, stuck within the 4 sides of a collectible rectangle? You humans make me sick!
Kenji Kajikawa played Agira for the monster's first 2 in-person appearances in the show, and it was his idea to bring back something Agira did in Ultraseven in one of these appearances, because he is a big fan of the kaiju. I'll show you what it was in a moment. Yoshiki Kuwabara played Agira in his 3rd appearance. Checking these 3 times the monster was used in the series should be pretty quick, because the main 3 Mons Dimension card kaiju could only be active for a very short amount of time, and in the Decker universe, each had a very specific task they were supposed to perform. In Agira's case, according to the official Decker website, the sole purpose for his existence in this universe was to try and take out a monster in one blow with his horn. I wonder if he'll end up doing that. In episode 6 of Decker, Agira was called on after Decker was dragged underground and surrounded by a large assortment of subterranean monsters. Once the Triceratops appeared, his horn began glowing a golden color, and he charged toward a Teleston and slammed the monster onto the ground, causing the creature to explode in a fiery blaze. His time having run out, Agira performed his moping pose from Ultraseven as he dissipated into digital particles. Yeah, it must be a sad life for him in this universe, only getting to try to do one thing before disappearing for several episodes. I can just imagine what that would be like for me. Alright, for the only thing I get to do this month, I'm gonna watch a movie with you guys. Okay, English subtitles are turned on, and okay, here we go! Oh, I'm so excited to see this again. Uh-oh.
Power's out!
Well, there goes my one thing.
He gone.
That would not be fun at all. For episode 9, Agira was summoned alongside Miclas and Windom to pull Grace the Gregor away from a Red King infected by spheres that was about to explode. I don't know what this has to do with beating a monster in one hit, like the website was talking about, but I guess this is another thing Agira can do. Then, in episode 14, he was released onto the battlefield, again with his friends, to take on a Spherosaurus. He grabbed the big monster's leg and was able to ram him in the stomach, but was taken out by the Terraphaser and turned back into digital particles. And that was his last appearance in a major show, for now. Hopefully the Triceratops will be back. Now let's check out what the monster has done in other media. Agira has made quite a few minor appearances worth mentioning. One of these is the show Chibira-kun, a series that was on at the same time as Ultra Fight, which apparently featured the same Agira costume used for Ultra Fight and Ultraseven and had the monster play several different roles. He's appeared in stage shows where he looks super fat. I think you need to work out, Agira. Oh, I didn't mean that much. This is an Agira from Ultraman Story 0. You don't want to mess with this guy. I believe this may actually be one of Agira's parents, and that their son was entrusted to Seven in this manga. I haven't read it though, so I'm not certain. Agira made some quick cameos in Ultra Zone and was also featured in the data card game Mega Monster Battle Ultra Monsters Neo, not to mention the old Super Nintendo Ultraseven game. Someone on YouTube has also posted footage apparently from a pachinko game of Agira, Windom, and Miclas being attacked mercilessly by the imitation Ultraseven before being saved by the real deal. Whether or not it's real, it's really cool. The monster has made some other minor appearances. Whoa, he's so small. What happened here? This pic is from Ultraman Fighter Super Legend, I believe. Anyway, Agira has made some other minor appearances as well, listed here. If I missed any, please go ahead and mention it in a comment. And now, on to the merchandise. We'll begin with the 3 types of Agira figures I've got in my personal collection, which you can see here. First up, I've got an Ultra Monster Series version that uses a 1989 mold. Then there's this little Bandai Gashapon version, and finally is the newest addition to my collection, which I just picked up. It's from the smaller Ultra Monster series and is based on more recent iterations of the kaiju. These are all the authentic versions of the monster I've got, but there are also 2 bootleg Agira figures lurking around my house. Namely a smaller one from the Super Dino Monsters line, and a larger one that I unfortunately wasn't able to find from the Super Dinosaurs line. The line called him Godzilla. What's funny is that the latter line didn't give Agira's name to the right monster. If you want an Agira figure, but for some reason you refuse to own any of the varieties that I have, first of all, that's kind of strange, but second of all, you definitely have options. This 2009 Ultra Monster Series Agira, for example, is one I don't have in my collection yet, but I'd like to pick it up at some point. By the way, if you're in that monster buying mood, I would recommend you check out my eBay store, Geronimo's Giant Junction, by checking the link in the description. I've literally got hundreds of Ultra Kaiju toys, and that's not even considering all the many other Toku items available. Proceeds help me not be as sad as Agira in this picture. And that's all the Agira stuff I have to share with you today, students. If I missed something, please enter it in the comments, and please like, subscribe, and follow me on Ultraman X. Just X. And I'll see you around.
Aw, our time's up.
Phooey.